Nikki watched Tom's face in the mirror as he moved toward her. She stood with her back to him. He smiled at her, and she shivered in anticipation. He was tall, well-built, and handsome as the devil, and she could feel herself responding to his smile and the words he whispered in her ear. As he took her in his arms, she gave herself willingly to him to do with as he would. She felt pushing against her as she bent forward. She looked over her shoulder and into her husband's face just as it changed to Harris's face. She screamed and awoke from her dream with a crash. It was just a dream, but it had seemed so real. But why had the face changed? As she lay in bed, she remembered. She had thought about this day for the last 2 weeks, and when Tom, her husband, told her he would be working late again, she had made her plans. She remembered the phone call to Harris just 3 days ago. She told him that Tom would be working late again, and this was the chance they had been waiting for. Harris had asked her if she was sure, to which she replied emphatically, yes. This was the payback she had planned ever since Harris had told her of Tom's infidelity. It was just 2 weeks ago when Tom called to tell her he would be late coming home again. This was becoming a habit that she didn't like, and it was so unlike him to do something like that. She was fixing dinner when Harris had called to say he was stopping by that evening. Harris and Tom had been friends since boyhood, and they had maintained their friendship all through their adult life. Harris was recently divorced and had been spending a lot of time at their place, playing with the little ones and trying to resume a normal life. Rita, his wife, had cheated on him, and he had come home to find her and one of her co-workers in bed together. Harris had lost his temper and beat the man before the police arrived and pulled him off. Neither had pressed charges, so Harris was spared jail time. Rita tried to get Harris to forgive her and take her back, but he would have nothing to do with her. She contested the divorce, but there were no children involved, so it went relatively quickly once Rita found that Harris was going to stick to his guns and settle for nothing less than the divorce. Since then, Harris had spent most of his free time with them, not dating or going out much. When Harris arrived, she noticed he seemed quiet and withdrawn. He asked about Tom, but she told him that Tom would be late and that dinner was already finished, so they might as well go ahead and eat. She had already fed the twins, and they were taking a nap. So Harris accepted, and they ate a companionable dinner together. She noticed that he seemed quiet and preoccupied as they ate, and as they were finishing dessert with coffee, she asked Harris to talk about what was bothering him. At first he refused, but she kept after him until he finally relented. "Nikki, you know I love you and Tom. You two are my best friends, and you were there for me when my life fell apart. I wouldn't do anything to hurt either one of you. You know that." "I know that, Harris. But I know something's bothering you, and you have to tell me about it. You've suffered enough, and I just want to help take some of the worry from you. So tell me what's bothering you. What I have to say is going to hurt you, and maybe Tom. I don't know how I can do that. If I hurt either of you, I'll just want to kill myself. But if I don't tell you, you could be hurt much worse later, and I couldn't stand that, so I don't know what to do. Just tell me, and let me worry about the rest. I'm here for you. You know that, and nothing you could tell me would change that. Go ahead, let it out. First, you have to promise me that you will never tell Tom that I told you this." "Fine, I promise." "Now tell me what is bothering you." "Tom is cheating on you with a woman he met at work." Harris looked like he had just eaten something rotten, and he had tears in his eyes as he said this. She said nothing for a long time as she stared at Harris with eyes wide open and her mouth forming an O of shock. There were no tears yet. The shock was too great and the denial was too strong. She refused to believe. "Say something, Nikki. What are you thinking? Come on, don't do this to me." Harris was beginning to panic. This is not what he expected. "I don't believe you. Why would you say something like that to me? What do you mean he is cheating? I don't believe you." Nikki was almost crying as what he had said began to sink in. "I'm telling you the truth. Tom is cheating with a woman named Phyllis, and she works in his office. I saw them twice at the Holiday Inn on Chivas Street. They went up to one of the rooms and stayed there for over an hour each time. It happened 3 weeks ago and again last Tuesday." Harris was watching her with a sad look on his face. "I never asked him about it because I didn't want to know anything about it, but I couldn't let you be hurt by this. It isn't fair to you for Tom to be doing this. I had to tell you." That was the conversation, and she and Harris talked about it for the next hour or so after she put the twins to bed and made a pact not to let Tom know that they had found out about his affair. When Tom came home that night, Nikki behaved as if nothing was different, and Tom showed no indication that he was cheating. He even tried to make love, but Nikki pleaded fatigue. Even though she hid her feelings, she was thinking about her next moves and what she would do to confront Tom. The more she thought of it, the angrier she became. She cried herself to sleep that night, and many nights after that when Tom fell asleep. Things slowly returned to a normal pattern for Nikki as she let the infidelity simmer in her subconscious. She had not forgotten, just suppressed. It further infuriated her that Tom continued to behave as though he were not cheating on her. He was very good at hiding his affair, she had to admit. It was one evening after Tom had called saying that he would be late again that Nikki decided what she was going to do. She thought about it for a while and then called Harris, asking him to come over. Once he was there, she described her plan to him. He listened and tried to withhold the smile that had been building as she told him what she wanted to do. He very solemnly declared that he would help her even though it would hurt him to deceive Tom that way. With his agreement, Nikki began to finalize her plan. She very carefully wrote a letter to Tom, describing in full detail exactly what she would be doing and that she would be doing it with Harris. She had confided in Harris her plan to tell Tom, but had not told Harris that she was going to identify him. Harris believed she was going to keep his part in this anonymous, the only reason he had agreed to it. She read and re-read the letter, making sure it delivered the maximum amount of hurt to Tom. Once she was satisfied, she put the letter in an envelope addressed to Tom in big block letters and put it in her purse to wait the right time. She asked Tom that evening if he had an idea of the next time he would be working late since she wanted to spend the evening with her sister who lived about an hour away. She wanted to make plans for the twins to stay with her mom while they visited. Both Nikki's mom and dad were still alive and lived just 3 miles away. Her sister was single and had never considered marriage. She was happy living by herself and enjoyed her life, but rarely visited with Nikki or their parents. Tom said that he suspected the next evening would be that Wednesday. He wasn't sure, but it looked like a good bet. Nikki thanked him and said she would make tentative plans. The next day, she called the Holiday Inn and booked a room for that evening. She put the room in her own name and made sure that she used one of their joint credit cards. It was important that Tom be able to verify that she had stayed there. She next called Harris and told him to be prepared for Wednesday as the day. He agreed and said he would take off work early just to be sure. The next day went very slowly as Nikki waited to see if this Wednesday was to be the day she got back at Tom. She couldn't wait to see the reaction on his face as he read the letter, knowing that when he did it would be too late to stop it from happening. She would let him know the pain and hurt she had suffered. She wanted him to pay. About 1:30 that day, Tom called to say he was indeed going to be working late. He said that he thought he could be home by 9 o'clock that evening, and if she was going to her sister's, he would just pick up something to eat on the way home. She thanked him and hung up, elated and jumping with energy. This was it. Payback time. She called Harris at work and told him to pick her up at the house at 6 o'clock that evening. He said he was ready and hoped he could do this. She said that she would help him and not to worry. She got the twins ready and took them to her mother's place. Her mom loved watching the twins, so it was never a problem getting her to agree. She packed a small overnight bag with some very naughty items, her cosmetics and those essentials she would need to make herself irresistible to Harris. She also took some casual clothes for afterwards and whatever else she thought she might need. She showered and dressed in a short red dress she used to wear a lot when she and Tom went out more. It was cut low in the back and very short, hitting her at mid-thigh. She still fit into it very nicely since she kept herself quite trim. She knew she looked good since she was hit on often at the health club. Tom always complimented her on her figure, which again caused her to question why he would cheat on her. She put the letter to Tom on the kitchen counter right next to the coffee cup that he always used. He would see it almost immediately. Once he saw it, he would open it and read. By that time, she and Harris would have already done the deed, and he would have to accept the knowledge that he had caused his wife to be unfaithful. And since she was telling him about Harris, he would know that she had cheated with his best friend. The double hit would make the pain even worse. That's what she hoped for. Bastard. She had Harris pick her up at the house, and they drove directly to the hotel. She had already pre-registered, so she had only to give them her card and pick up the room key. Harris waited by the elevators while she completed the registration. They then went to the room together. They were in the room and she had removed all of her clothes to stand in front of the mirror her back to him, just as in her dream. Harris moved toward her as she stood there. She watched his reflection as he moved. He smiled at her, and she shivered in anticipation. He was tall, well-built, and handsome as the devil, and she could feel herself responding to his smile and his words. This was to be his reward for telling her about Tom. She would submit to him and let him make love to her, just as Tom was doing with his lover. Two could play this game, and she was going to enjoy it. But she remembered her dream and remembered that this was just revenge. Pleasure would imply that she wanted to do this with a man not her husband, and that caused her to question her actions. Harris, for his part, was excited. He finally had the opportunity to F Nikki. He had been waiting for this day for a long time, and his plan had finally borne fruit. He had hatched this plot about Tom cheating when he found out that Tom was going to be working late 1 or 2 nights a week with Phyllis and 3 other members of a planning team. They were planning a major expansion, and Tom was the leader of the team. If they could pull this off, Tom told Harris that it would lead to a major promotion and a trip to Europe for him and Nikki. He wanted to keep it as a surprise for Nikki until he was sure about it. Harris had then told Nikki that Tom was cheating on her and named Phyllis as the woman. He knew Nikki didn't know Phyllis and so couldn't check directly. Tom was so secretive that he only called Nikki after he had planned a work session, so he played into the plot, making Harris's job easier. Nikki was convinced, and she was now going to be his. Harris pulled his shirt over his head and tossed it into a corner. He unbuckled his belt and opened the waist of his pants and stepped out of them with a kick. Nikki was magnificent. She was looking at him in the mirror with a slight smile, and she looked so gorgeous standing there. He moved toward her with his arms open. Nikki tentatively backed into his arms and let him pull her to his body. It was like a furnace. He was so hot. She, on the other hand, was shivering as if chilled. He closed his arms around her, and instead of feeling warm and protected, she felt confined and suffocated. She tried to relax and let this happen, but she couldn't. As she looked up to her reflection to see herself wrapped in his embrace, she suddenly realized that what she was about to do was not revenge. It was just wrong. Nikki pushed away from Harris and wrapped her arms around herself. She wouldn't look at him and kept her back to him. She was suddenly ashamed of her nakedness. "Nikki, what's the matter? Are you okay? I would never hurt you. You know that. Please, let me hold you and make love to you as we planned. I'll make you feel good."
Ugh.
"I don't know what the matter is. I'm scared and I can't feel anything but terror. I need to do this, but I'm having second thoughts. Please, let me think." Nikki tried to move back to the bathroom to get a bathrobe, but Harris stepped in front of her and tried to hold her again. She moved away, but he followed. She was becoming afraid of him and tried to tell him so. "Harris, please. You're scaring me. I asked you to wait and let me think. I don't know what's wrong, but I don't think I can do this." She again tried to move past him, but he continued to block her. "Nikki, I think you need to come here to me and let me make love to you. That's all I have been thinking of, and you know we are just doing this to punish Tom for his cheating, right? Come on, Nikki. Stop teasing me and let's do this." Harris' patience was wearing thin. So close to his desires, and yet she was being difficult. "I don't think I can do this. I'm sorry, but I am going to get dressed and go home. I still have time to get the letter I left so that he doesn't know anything about you and me in this night. I guess I can't cheat the way Tom did. I love him too much and I believe in my marriage vows." Harris stopped in his attempt to convince her and looked at her in horror. "You didn't tell him you were going to be here with me, did you? You said you were going to keep my part of this quiet. Tom will kill me. I told him about you, and that you were the one who helped me see what he had done. He can't get mad at you since he is the one that was wrong. He will be angry with me, but sorry for making me do it. You'll be fine as long as I can get the letter before he sees it. But he is working late tonight, so we have plenty of time." She seemed to be much more relaxed now that she had decided against doing what she had planned. Harris considered forcing Nikki to go through with her plan when her cell phone rang. She went to her purse and looked at the caller ID. It was Tom, calling from work. "Hello, Tom. Where are you? I thought you were working tonight."
Baba.
"I'm done and I am free the rest of the evening. I've got some really great news that I want to share with you. So I'll be home in about 30 minutes with a bottle of champagne. We're going to celebrate tonight." "Celebrate what? And what do you mean you'll be home in 30 minutes? Where are you?" "I'm at work." Where did you think I would be when I told you I was working late? Did you think I was having an affair or something? Not likely with you at home waiting for me. I'll see you in 30. With that, he hung up and left a startled Nikki staring at the dead phone. Nikki turned to Harris and told him what Tom had said. She wanted to know why Tom was calling from work if he was cheating, as Harris said. He just stared at her as he saw his plans turn to crap. Tom would be home in half an hour, and his chance at having a piece of Nikki was gone forever. He saw in her face that she now knew he had been conning her, and on top of that, if they didn't get to her house in the next 30 minutes to get that letter that the stupid bee had left, he was going to be up S Creek without a paddle. Tom would kill him for sure, and he was one of the few people who knew Tom and his background well enough to know that Tom really would do it. He and Tom grew up on the streets of South LA, and while he was one of the vast army of grunts that did the dirty work, Tom was one of the generals, and he was no one to cross. He had come a long way from his past, but the past was still a part of him, and that explained in part why he was so successful in business. Tom knew people, and people owed him. He told Nikki to get dressed and get her stuff. They had to get home before Tom. She was panicked and was throwing her clothes back on, ignoring underwear and socks. She was ready to go in just under 3 minutes. Harris was ready as well, and they ran from the room and down the stairs, not waiting for an elevator. They found the car and Harris opened the doors via his remote. They jumped into the car and he backed out with tires squealing. He pulled away and drove to the exit onto the main thoroughfare. He slowed only slightly with a cursory glance at the traffic and pulled out with his foot on the accelerator. Just as he cleared the exit from the hotel, he saw the truck coming from Nikki's side. He floored the gas, hoping to clear the truck, but there was not enough time. The truck hit the car on the passenger's side, just behind the rear wheel. The car was spun around almost 360 degrees, and while Nikki was spared the direct impact, the jolt slammed her against the window and blood flew everywhere from a head wound. That was the last thing Harris remembered until he woke up in the hospital 2 days later.